Our train is completely non-smoking, and this does include the use of e-cigarettes and vape pens. I'd also like to ask that you keep all arms, legs, hands, feet, noses, and toes inside the train at all times. We'll be coming in close contact with many different objects, and it is unsafe to reach out and grab them. I would also like to ask that there's absolutely no running on today's train. You are, however, free to move around the train as we go along, but I do ask you use caution when crossing between the train cars, as the plates between them move up and down and side to side, and are slippery when wet. Parents, please, I do ask that you do not allow your small children to cross these plates alone, and please hold their hand when doing so. And I request that no one stands on these plates at any time. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, who's ready for a train ride? That seat is a horse named the bird, 2 long, 1 short, 12 and long, 41 across. This is federal railroad regulation, and it works hard and definite that we are in fact this train. Coming up on the downhill side of the train, you'll notice that we're passing by an old freight depot. This old freight depot is what will pass today, but just recently it was renovated and now serves as a event center. Also on the downhill side of the train, we get to pass by an old 3-story brick building. This old brick building was the original St. Nicholas Hospital. This building was built in 1904 by the Sisters of Charity and was used as Leadville's primary hospital. The new one was built in 1957. Downhill side of the train, you might notice a large body of water. This is known as Turquoise Lake. Turquoise Lake is a man-made lake and was built in the early 1900s and named after because of the large turquoise deposit that was found in the mountains surrounding it. The sagebrush area we are currently traveling through is known as Poverty Flats. And as the name suggests, not much is found in this area. Also on the opposite side of the train, large mountains with a very flat top, mostly covered in trees, is known as Offset Mountain. Our journey today will take us around the mountain spot. Coming up on the downhill side of the train, we begin to pass by some of our extra train cars. We will pass by a boxcar, 2 cabooses, a rapid auto, and 2 buses. First of all, cars is known as a planter. A planter car was built in 1980 along our tracks. Also coming up on the downhill side of the train, we are coming up on our roundhouse.
certain numbers? Do you know which one?
No, they don't have it. I'm pretty sure it's
No, we good? Yeah. Thank you, appreciate it. Any side you want, son.
That side.
Later in our journey today, we will integrate as percent at an average speed of around 10 miles an hour. As our train enters the curve, we will enter known as propelling. To get our power line, we get the chance to get a much better example. The two long, the short, and the long that we blow at the exhaust. Back in that time, Leadville was even considered to be the state capital of Colorado. They put 5 cities on the list. As we all know, Denver finally wins the title, but unfortunately for Leadville, we missed out on that title by only 2 votes. Now it's down in Denver. They like to refer to themselves as the Mile High City. But up here in Leadville, they like to refer to themselves as the 2 Mile High City. Our Leadville wins by elevation 10,152. As we do boast, the nation's highest golf is actually one of 5 races along the rail line. The first by a wooden trestle. So let's move to our transportation. Very reliable motoring for trains. Fortunately, all the trestles along the rail line are very silently over top of the But because we only run very light passenger trains, and this line used to be narrow gauge, we were grandfathered in by the FRA. The curve is known as the Bird's Eye Curve, which lies here in Bird's Eye Gulch. Here on Bird's Eye is one of the greatest photo-taking opportunities along the rail line, as the curve is so sharp that the engine and the caboose will be able to see each other. There's a small mountain stream running through the gulch. If you look on the uphill side of the train, you can see just how close the tires are to the large train. If you look on the downhill side of the train, you will see a chance to see one of the Many of you may be wondering why we blow our horn way up here on the mountainside. Well, it's not just because we like to have fun blowing our horns. It's because that we have crossed over a 4-wheel drive road, and it's under FRA regulation to blow our horn at every crossing. As you can see, we have some friends up here doing some 4x4. Back at Bird's Eye Curve, you may have noticed a few foundations to old buildings. town, there was no efficient way to move all those precious metals in and out of the town. And so there was no efficient way for people to get in the mountains. The railroad companies that did this, they were working very hard to get into Leadville so they could know where the empire. The first railroad company to achieve its typical path was the Denver and Rio Grande Western. They built their rail line using the Bowery for the Leadvilles. Now, because they were the first railroad into Leadville, many other railroads, such as the Denver South Park and Pacific, and these two railroads signed a joint operation agreement in 1879. The Denver South Park and Pacific had to pay a small track usage fee to the Denver Rio Grande Railroad. Unfortunately, South Park did not stay true to paying those usage fees, and this would lead to many legal battles between the two railroad companies. The Supreme Court would eventually rule in favor of the Rio Grande. This would force the South Park to pay all the missing track fees. After legal battles settled, South Park said enough is enough. They decided to run their own rail line into Leadville. They built the rail line we're currently using. They started construction in 1881.
I'm having fun with you.
Same.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this area you'll begin to feel the train slowing down. This is because we have entered into an area known as the cliffs. Or, as we like to say, the edge of the world. For those of you who are afraid of heights, I do recommend that you move to the uphill side of the train at this time, as we will be over 500 feet above the valley floor, and our train will be coming within 2 to 3 feet of the edge. For those of you who move to the uphill side of the train, you may notice a slight discoloration of rocks. This discoloration is known as living, which comes in orange, yellow, green, and black. Wow. It is a combination of fungus and algae. To help remember people, these facts about life, I do enjoy telling a very, very good joke. I usually tell people that the fungus and the algae have to liken one another. But unfortunately, last time I heard their relationship was on the rocks. For those of you who do not mind the height, you do get a great panoramic view of the Arkansas River Valley. And if you look backwards to your left, you'll get a great shot of Mount Massive framed perfectly in the valley wall. Our line up here is commonly known as the high line. But many people do wonder why the South Park Railroad was forced to build all the way up here on the mountainside. Well, the South Park began construction on this line after legal battles with the Rio Grande. And so these two railroads were not on the best of terms, to say the least. The South Park was required to build up here on the mountainside because the Rio Grande owned the right-of-way to the valley floor below. As I said before, South Park started construction on this line in 1881. They worked very diligently. By August of 1883, they had finished the first 120 miles of track out of Denver, Colorado. joining time, the rail lay in Leadville, Colorado, which is about 30 miles away. Once the Rio Grande realized that South Park actually had a chance at finishing the rail line, they canceled their half of the joint operations agreement. This would then force a 6-month deadline on South Park. South Park had until February 6th of 1884 to finish 30 miles of track with the most treacherous terrain in Colorado. And to make matters even worse, they had to do this in the dead of winter. Can you imagine attempting to lay a rail line up here in the winter, as it does get below freezing, and we can get over 6 feet of standing snow. The South Park then pulled off the impossible and finished their rail line in Leadville on February 5th of 1984. Yes, that's right, folks. They finished one day before their deadline was due. Although the South Park was lucky, they finished their rail line in February of that year. There would be no rail operations on it until September of the same year, as much of the rail needed to be repaired due to the heavy snow they received that year. Now, even though the South Park was successful finishing all repairs and operations, their time would eventually run out. The South Park Railroad was owned by the Union Pacific Railroad Company. The Union Pacific thought it would be a great idea to raise freight charges on the line, as it was the shortest way to and from Denver. Unfortunately, they raised their prices just a little too high, and this was forced business to the Rio Grande on the south or below. At one point, the Rio Grande was controlling almost 90% of the freight going in and out of Leadville. And once again, the South Park dealt with a bad hand and was forced to shut down. They failed to bring bankruptcy and sold the line to the Colorado Southern 1898, thus meaning the end of the ever-long rivalry with the Rio Grande. Downhill side of the train, we do pass through the gulch, and you may notice a set of wires running through the trees. This set of wires is not a power line, telephone, or even a telegraph line. But this does in fact belong to the zip line. Yes, the zip line company that owns this set of wires is known as We do have a joint operation with the zip line company. If you would like to ride the train and zip line in the same way, you are able to do so. You do not have to look to fit the zip line company though, as it is only a 5-hour trip. This is in fact one of the only zip lines in North America to offer the chance to zip line over a train. If you look to the downhill side of the dirt, downhill side of the train, you'll around this curve over here, we begin to enter into another gulch along our rail line. This gulch is known as French Gulch. French Gulch is in fact home to the French Gulch Water Tower. The French Gulch Water Tower was once a gravity-fed tower that sat on top of the hill, on the outside side of the train, where it was fed through a piping system by a reservoir in the mountains on the hillside. When the line was converted to standard gauge in 1943, the water tower was put in its current location, raised up to accommodate the much larger steam engine. You may notice that the water tower does not line up with the tracks or whatsoever. This is due to a bit of maximum here. An engineer is a great man. We're on a journey from Climax to Leadville when they noticed that a washout had occurred. The engineer threw his emergency brakes on the train, while he and his brakeman jumped from the train, only sustaining minor injuries. The engine, as you can imagine, was not so fortunate. The engine, along with the tanker car, being crashed completely into the washout. It would cost the company, the Burlington Northern Railroad, a whopping $50,000 to hoist the engine out of the washout. They then had to take it to the roundhouse, where it would be needed a drain of all oil and fuel. And to make matters worse, the engineer happened to push the engine a bit too hard, and it derailed again right before the roundhouse. But ultimately, the engine was shipped off to Lincoln, Nebraska, where it was restored and repaired to rail service. These aspen trees have many different shades of green on them and are close to turning yellow, orange, and eventually red. As I said before, aspen trees are all one living organism and connected by a series of roots. This makes the aspen tree the largest living organism in the world. As a matter of fact, in Colorado, we have an aspen grove that's over 200 acres.
It is now. It's weird. And you know what? If you stare out the window, it looks like we're going that way. So even though we're not moving at all. That's an interesting.
If we were to continue our journey up the mountain, we would soon come up to the Climax mine. It was back in 1979 when a man by the name of Charlie Center staked up a claim in Mount Bartlett. He did not find gold nor silver, but what he did find was a gray chalk-like substance. Not knowing what this substance was, he took a sample of it down to the assay office in Leadville. But they could not determine what this substance was either. In fact, it would be another 16 years before this substance was discovered to be molybdenum. Now we do understand that molybdenum can be a hard word to say, so we just call it moly for short. Moly is a steel hardener, and back in the late 1800s, Charlie didn't really have a good use for this, so he decided to sell his mining clay for $30,000. Seems like pretty good money in the late 1800s, right, guys? Well, unfortunately for Charlie, the Climax mine was producing up to $300,000 an hour. Poor Charlie just got a little bit too cheap. The mine picked up major production in both the world wars, as a steel hardener was greatly used to help with the war efforts. The mine shut down for some time during the world wars, but it continued to boom through the 1950s and 60s, and by the mid-1960s, the mine was forced to expand. They shipped 208 tons of explosives up to the mine. Now, to put that in perspective, our locomotive only weighs 120 tons. Well, as you can imagine, the day they set that off, it shook the ground. So much that it registered a 2.9 on the Richter scale in Golden, Colorado, which is about 90 miles away from Leadville. This was, in fact, one of the largest non-nuclear blasts to ever occur. The mine continued to operate all the way into the mid-1980s, but ultimately, the mine was forced to shut down. The Burlington Northern Railroad, who was in operation on this line at this time, no longer had a use for it, and they had two options. They could sell the line, or they could just simply abandon it, which was a very costly thing to do. It was back in 1987 that a local businessman by the name Ken Olson said to the Burlington Northern, "Hey, maybe we could make a deal." And a deal he made. Ken and his wife, Stephanie Olson, bought this rail line, including 2 engines, 8 flat cars, 4 box cars, 5 cabooses, a roundhouse, thousands of railroad ties and spikes, and 14 miles of tracks we have today for the amazing price of just $10. This was back in 1987, and they worked very hard over the winter. By Memorial Day weekend of 1988, the Leadville Colorado Southern Railroad opened its doors for business. We have operated every single summer since, and would like to thank you for joining us today. A footnote to the Climax mine, it did reopen in 2012, as there are many other additional uses for molybdenum. Moly is a whitening agent. It is found in the filaments of X-rays. It's used on the space station, and yes, it's found in your very own toothpaste. We even use it on a rail line as a high-temperature lubricant, as moly grease has a melting point of over 4,700 degrees. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will head back down to the water tower, but first I will radio the engineer, asking for a couple longhorns in the valley. When conditions are right, we do get the chance to hear an echo off the valley wall, so be sure to listen up as I radio the engineer.
That's cool.
not wander off. Also a reminder that here at the water tower, it's not smoking, as it is shown in the. If you happen to purchase any alcohol on the train, it does need to remain on board. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, you're free to step off the train and stretch your legs. We do have the water tower here, or you could take a tour of the 1963 caboose with our brakeman branded. You can also take a tour of the locomotive, but we do ask you step off the train, walk along the tracks, and enter from the nose. When it's time to get back on board, the engineer will honk the horn, and that's when you know it's time to go. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have a speech prepared for the way back down, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy the views. I'll talk to you when we get closer to the depot.
a ticker down here.
Well, that would be a good place to start.
Any other takers? I can bring it back to you.
Okay, I'll bring it right now.
Any trash that may be laying around, our shaker does work very hard to keep our train clean. Also, if I can get you to remember to grab your hats, jackets, backpacks, cameras, we definitely don't want you to forget all the great photos you took today. On behalf of Steve, our engineer, John in the boxcar, the ladies at the depot, Don and Nelson, our photographers, our track crew, myself, the officer, and the conductor, we'd like to thank you for riding with us. Hope you have a great rest of your day. One last quick announcement. If you'd like to buy any souvenirs or gifts from the depot, the dress code at 5. And from all of us, thank you for riding with us. We do accept personal tips, and they're always appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go, brother. You don't want these? No. Hey. Let's go. Let's go, boy.